Picture this, us at the Met Gala.
Wait, what? The Met Gala? Let's show him real power!
And here he comes! The man who once called himself a very stable genius has arrived. And tonight, stability is the last thing on the agenda. From the golden towers of Manhattan to the most fashionable red carpet on earth, ladies and gentlemen, put your diamond-encrusted hands together for the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Oh my, what are we looking at? A 12-foot golden tie trailing behind him like a victory lap. A ball gown skirt constructed entirely from dollar bills and signed executive orders. And is that a pudding green on his cape? The golf course came with him. His hair sculpted into an actual crown tonight. He is wearing his brand on his soles. Every step reads TRUMP in the carpet. This man cannot turn off the marketing. He stops. He points. He gives the double thumbs up. He points again at a different camera. Now he's signing someone's forehead. He's mouthing beautiful, so beautiful, directed at himself in the reflection of a camera lens. And there it is, the fist pump. The fist pump! The crowd goes absolutely wild, or at least his own entourage does, which he seems to count. Please, silence, total silence, for the next guest requires not applause, but reverence. He has traveled from the most secretive nation on earth. He controls an army of 1 million. He has tested missiles for fun. And tonight, he tests fashion. The supreme leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Kim Jong-un. I have no words, and I'm a fashion correspondent. Words are literally my job. He is wearing a military suit constructed entirely from miniature missiles and rocket casings, welded into a structured silhouette. The shoulder pads are actual missile launchers. And yes, they just shot confetti. Propaganda poster cape, steampunk nuclear goggles, and his military cap. His cap requires its own cart, a separate cart with wheels traveling alongside him. He is walking very slowly, hands clasped behind his back. He has stopped to inspect the carpet. I believe he is reviewing it like a military parade. He nods at nothing approvingly. His entourage of tiny generals in miniature tuxedos has just begun applauding. They will not stop until he tells them to. He has not smiled. He will not smile. Wait, was that? No, that was not a say. That was a warning. That we not describe him in advance. He prefers to be experienced. He is here, Vladimir Putin. He is wearing, and I want to describe this carefully because he is looking directly at me, a floor-length Siberian fur coat in pure white with a crystal mesh panel across the chest, which is bare. He insisted on that. Chess pieces in his trousers, a Fabergé egg headpiece. He looks like the czar of an extremely dangerous winter. He is walking at a pace I can only describe as inevitable. He has stopped. He is staring at a camera. The camera has not blinked. He has not blinked. 11 seconds. He has won. He has performed a judo bow to no one. He is sipping vodka. He is looking at us again. We're going to commercial. 5,000 years of civilization, the world's largest population, the second largest economy on earth. When he walks, history moves with him. From the Middle Kingdom to the Met Steps, Xi Jinping. The fiber optic robe is pulsing with golden light. The dragons, glowing ruby eyes, spiraling from hem to shoulder. His 20-foot train is carried by 8 terracotta warriors in designer armor. The inner lining shows GDP growth charts going vertical. He has turned economic data into haute couture. He glides. Other people walk. Xi Jinping glides. He nods. One deliberate nod. To camera position 7 only. He has produced a small red book from his sleeve. He checks something. He returns it. He nods again. The dragons on his robe appear to be nodding also. 1.4 billion people, ancient civilization, the world's largest democracy, and a beard that has its own fan club. From New Delhi, Narendra Modi. I can smell the outfit. The The fabric is constructed from thousands of marigold flowers, actual marigolds woven in. The peacock tail has just fanned open on the main carpet. It is 10 feet across. The Lotus Temple turban is blinding. His beard, braided with jasmine flowers, is frankly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen at this event. He is walking in perpetual namaste, bowing to each side, and the crowd is melting. He has stopped mid-carpet. He has just done a yoga pose. Warrior 2 on the Met Gala red carpet. He held it 4 seconds with perfect balance and a complete smile. The peacock tail maintained its fan the entire time. He is French. That is all the introduction required. For formality's sake, from the Élysée Palace, Emmanuel Macron, the deconstructed tuxedo, half immaculate white tie, half deliberately unfinished. The Eiffel Tower headpiece is 2 feet tall, lit from within, and somehow does not look ridiculous on him. He is carrying a real baguette as a clutch. A real baguette. He has just taken a bite. The crowd is losing its mind. Hands in pockets for the first 15 feet. Tray casual, then arms thrown wide open like addressing parliament. He's kissing people on both cheeks, prepared or not. He has pulled crumpled paper from nowhere and is delivering a speech about sovereignty. No one asked. It's quite good. Hold on to something. Hold on to your programs, your chairs, your dignity. Because the president of Argentina is about to arrive and things are going to get loud, fast, possibly dangerous. Here he comes, Javier Milei. He, the chainsaw. The chainsaw is the bodice. It's jeweled. It's gilded. It's still a chainsaw. His suit is shredded with Argentine colors. His hair, larger than his head, has gold coins through the curls. He's carrying a stuffed lion. He's throwing money into the crowd. And he's revving. The chainsaw bodice revs. He didn't walk. He launched. He grabbed a camera and filmed himself. He's explaining the Austrian School of Economics to Anna Wintour, who has not moved her face. He is crying, briefly, with joy. He's hugging a stranger. He's arguing with the stranger. He's hugging them again. There is money everywhere. His lion is running. Viva la libertad! He runs marathons. He boxes. He once did a pirouette behind the Queen of England. From Ottawa, jogging apparently, Justin Trudeau. The lumberjack coat with 8-foot train is epic. The Chanel toque reads "O Canada" in 12 languages. The moose waistcoat is photorealistic. And the socks, each one is a different pride flag. He caught me looking and is now pointing at his socks. He is pointing and nodding. He knew you'd look. He jogged the first 8 feet, caught himself and walked. He stopped to take selfies with the carpet crew, with the velvet rope holders, with a confused pigeon. He apologized for existing in someone's personal space, then apologized for apologizing. He has noticed a camera and is pointing at his socks again. He controls the Bosphorus. He bridges Europe and Asia, literally. Tonight he bridges Ottoman Empire and haute couture. The president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The Grand Kaftan in crimson and gold. The entire blue mosque in raised embroidery across the back. Minarets from shoulder to hem. Underneath, a perfect modern suit because he's also a 21st century president. The diamond crescent and star turban. He is carrying an eagle, a golden eagle, on his arm. He will arrive precisely on time. He will leave precisely on time. He has pre-approved each step of his carpet walk with 3 committees. The Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz. The circuit board suit is engineering art. Golden traces in the weave. The Autobahn tie has tiny cars in lane. His pocket square is geometrically perfect. There is a tiny protractor clipped beside it. He has just stopped to straighten a velvet rope that was 2 millimeters out of alignment. He is satisfied. He is continuing. He once wore Nike Airs to a formal function and it became international news for a week. Tonight he has leaned into it with diamonds. From 10 Downing Street, Rishi Sunak, the Union Jack morning coat. The flag is an optical illusion in the weave. The Downing Street waistcoat, the budget briefcase as a clutch, and the Nike Airs, diamond-encrusted, pristine white, walking next to designer Italian leather shoes and somehow winning. He is is explaining fiscal responsibility of his outfit to a journalist who seems convinced he was a factory worker. He became a union leader. He went to prison. He came back. He became president twice. Tonight he has come to the Met Gala and brought the entire spirit of Brazil with him. Lula, the Amazon rainforest hand-painted in silk across his entire back, with real pressed Amazonian flowers in the lining. His carnival headdress is 4 feet of green and gold joy. His shirt is open 3 buttons because it is Brazil, and this is formal. He is holding a caipirinha and has been since he arrived. He is absolutely sambaing. Full samba, halfway down the carpet. The crowd has joined in. 2 photographers are sambaing. I believe that is Vladimir Putin's foot tapping. He stopped, shed 1 single emotional tear, waved both arms above his head, kept going. Greatest red carpet moment in Met Gala history.